So the mineral or metal, I should say, we're going to be talking about as the opening frequency for the solar plexus trinity is none other than gold. And just as long as silver has been associated with the moon and the feminine energies, gold has been associated with the solar principle and the outward flowing masculine energies. So I know in a lot of different cultures there may be some crossover where there are a lot of feminine associations with the sun as well. But really, we're talking about the movement of energy. And just as with our solar plexus, it's about how we move forward in life and move out into life. And that connection that we have with our own ego and our individual spark is how we share our light with the world. So there's so much we can talk about when exploring the frequency of gold, but just looking purely at its actual qualities as a metal, gold is not only highly valuable, it is also very pure. So I don't know if anyone has ever seen gold being refined. There's a beautiful man in Mullumbimby, near where I live, that creates these beautiful golden beads, as you can see I'm wearing, and he takes you through a process of the refinement of gold in his studio. So you choose a nugget of gold, and then by adding fire, you can see it spinning and spinning and illuminating. And as it does so, it pushes out any impurities. It's quite a fascinating experience to work when you go into a goldsmith's workshop to see how this metal actually just cannot hold impurity when it is under the pressure and the heat of the flame. So that quality and that essence within gold is about bringing things to the surface that are not in the truth of your essence and showing, just burning them up. So that's why gold is always associated with alchemy and the process of transformation, because ultimately it's like going into the fires to release and to transform and to make pure any impurities or things that we've held on to, metaphorically speaking, that are not in full alignment with our ultimate truth. So I just wanted to give you that little visualization and just looking at this piece of gold, this tiny little nugget, as it was purifying, it glowed like the sun. It's something, quite remarkable to experience that the molten metals and how they move. And it's no wonder that gold represents the pinnacle of the alchemical process. So we have the pure nature of gold, and also its nature of being malleable and flexible. For such a heavy and dense mineral or metal, it is actually quite pliable and easy to work with for jewelers. So that also gives us the insight around to be strong and to hold your energy doesn't mean to be firm, fixed and stubborn. It actually is about knowing how to bend, how to mold, how to soften. And, ultimately, the more heat we're under, the more we soften. And sometimes we need to take on those qualities ourselves when we want to move forward with greater ease and grace. And the other quality that gold has is its conductivity. So it is very similar to copper, how there are a lot of copper wires or wiring used to help conduct energies. In a lot of probably more expensive technologies, gold is also used. So gold is a conductor of energy, and it also is a connector and conductor. And it's this quality that actually brings its affinity to our nervous system. So if you think of all the synapses in our brain and all the communication and the electrical pulses that move through our body to inform our body, this is where gold does its most beautiful work. And it really has an affinity with balancing hemispheres of the brain and neural pathways. So it's a really wonderful stone or frequency to call on when we are wanting to reprogram, realign those pathways, those neural pathways, and even DNA programming on more metaphysical layers of how we can reshape, melt ourselves down and reshape and remold and create new pathways. So those qualities of gold really sort of show us how we can use the energy in our body. And not only is it valuable, it's about showing you how you are valuable. And often this valuable nature of gold associates it with people who have wealth, like the royalty. So it was often the royalty in various cultures that were adorned in gold. You couldn't be adorned in gold if you didn't have the funds to do so. So it was also associated with the sovereigns. The word sovereign is to be royal, and ultimately the deeper realization in that is to be a sovereign, to be sovereign to yourself, is to step into your regal nature. You don't need to be born of a bloodline of royalty to be a sovereign. To be sovereign is acknowledging your worth, that you are valuable unto yourself. So when we can take on those qualities that gold shows us, this really gives us the insight in how to open to these frequencies. On more of a metaphysical level as well, gold is the gatekeeper to the higher emotional realm in the fourth sphere and the tree of life. And this is the frequency that opens us into ultimate abundance. So to be abundant is not just about financial wealth, although that is part of it. It is definitely part of wealth. And just as we've been working on that reciprocity and flow of energy through the sacral chakra, once we bring it up into our solar plexus where we know our worth and we can engage by shining out into the world and also having that two-way flow, this is where we start opening into the ultimate abundance of the truth of reality, which is an energetic step. And this is a step that is ushered by the frequency of gold. So I can go into greater depth on what other frequencies that we take those steps specifically for abundance, which ultimately is held by the frequency of citrine. A lot of people would be thinking, solar plexus, that must be a citrine frequency. And just because I'm working with these specific 3 golden crystals doesn't mean there aren't other frequencies, other minerals in that color bandwidth that don't play a very important role. It's just knowing that what their actual jobs are. So ultimately we're stepping into that wealth dynamic, but gold opens the doorway. And this is an emotional doorway. It's not an intellectual one. So even though we're talking about the radiating masculine frequencies, it is actually a deeply emotional feeling of understanding what it feels like to know your worth and trust your connection ultimately to spirit. Gold is also very much associated with the Christed frequency, the Christed light. So this is not only specific to the figure Jesus Christ. This is talking about to be Christed was actually to, like when we see saints and people depicted with halos, so whether they were Buddhas, whether they were, in various different cultures, these beings that are depicted with the luminosity around them, with the auric fields. And this happens cross-culturally. This is not just in Christian and Catholic iconography. This is also, through Tibetan Buddhism, throughout India, even areas in Australian cave painting and in South and Central America, you can see that these beings of light that were depicted had these luminous, radiant kind of crowns. So this luminosity was recognized as someone who had ignited that flame within them. So the gold frequency helps us to step into that, and ultimately it's by igniting those fires within. We're designed to be lit, we're designed to be ignited, but there is a lot in the way, a lot of mental and patterning and beliefs that sort of block us from that connection with spirit that comes through the crown and ultimately connects in with our self, our soul level. So just as gold connects us with that light of spirit, it also helps and supports when we are experiencing the opposite of that. So it's a wonderful frequency to tune into when we are feeling disconnected, lost, in despair, not seeing the point. You know, I'm someone who I feel like I was always having a deep knowing of something higher. I wouldn't call myself a religious person, but there was this trust that everything happens for a reason and that we are being guided, and ultimately we are children of the divine mother father energies as we are moving through life on earth. But then, you know, life happens and we have a few setbacks, we have a few knockdowns, and it is easy along the path to lose faith, lose connection, and have doubt. Oh, I thought I was being guided and looked after, but maybe I'm not. Actually, maybe it was all an illusion or a delusion. And actually, maybe all we have to deal with is just what's right in front of us. We get very practical. I believe in what I can see and touch, and anything else just leads you up the garden path. And I've been there. I've really moved through this process in my own spiritual path. And it's very interesting because the frequency of gold is actually my soul crystal. So it's part of my deep embodiment in this lifetime is to go through the avenues and pathways of everything that is not holding that frequency, so I can come back around and embody that again and come back to the remembrance of having that trust in self, having that trust in something greater, having that knowing that I am part of something bigger. And actually, you know, when you're on your knees, when you get pushed to that point where you just don't know anymore, you know, who to trust or what to believe, it is when we are brought to our knees in life that that pathway can open up. And this is where the energy of, I spoke to earlier, of becoming a sovereign, holding that regal essence for yourself on the pathway of true abundance. The first step is to actually be brought to your knees. So if you're in that place in yourself, or if you've journeyed there before, don't lose faith, don't lose hope, because you're right where you need to be to reconnect to something greater. And once we make that connection and that doorway is opened again, we get to zoom out from our own unique individual expression and get a bigger picture. And that's why the animal for gold is the eagle. The great eagle is, in many cultures, was one that the shamans would use to gain greater perspective for the tribe, to see where the flocks of buffalo were grazing, you know, to be able to get insight from a higher perspective, a more divine perspective, on behalf, to bring message through on behalf of all of the community. So if we can do that for ourselves, use the energy of the eagle that is very deeply connected with that golden frequency to pull out, to connect up, to connect in, to see a bigger picture, then we can bring all of that divine will and marry it and connect it with our own will. And I was speaking a bit about that in the first video. When life is hard, the best thing we can do is marry the divine will with our own will, and then a way is opened. So yeah, I really love this frequency. It's not an easy energy to just get if you're not ready for it. But by journeying with this crystal and working deeply into the solar plexus, I believe that a whole gateway of illumination is coming to you. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say about gold. There is lots more in there that you can delve into, but it is a beautiful energy to open you, open the way, clear the way. And when life has felt dark and challenging and stressful, gold is your friend to tell you to remember who you are. Just trust, be malleable, be flexible, and come back to the purity of the spirit that you are. Okay, next video coming up soon.